Welcome to the latest episode of Strangers Worth Meeting. I'm your host, Tyler Hickson, and I'm here with my guest today, Daniel Poe. We find ourselves this evening in downtown Tyler, Texas, in a very cool space. This is the Lightbox Collective, of which Daniel here is a member and a part of this organization. And today we're just going to kind of find out a little bit about him, his background, some of the things that make him a stranger worth meeting. So welcome to the show, Daniel. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had some fun so far. We kind of got our photos set up, and I didn't have good enough lighting, and this guy whips out this giant studio light. I'm in the right place for this.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do around here. So
yeah, right.
Glad I could be prepared for you.
Well, you are the pro in it, so I appreciate you jumping up to help. It's probably one of those things for you where, like, if you see it looking bad, you can't stop yourself from wanting to help and be a part of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go to movies and stuff, and it's like, the movie wasn't good, but man, that lighting was great. There, or I'll find myself like looking at like some flickering light in an old gas station.
Yeah.
Like, this could work. This could work.
So, and that does something for you.
Yeah. So
that.
just like, I guess, evaluating the situation and kind of letting. A lot of times you can let the scene kind of tell you what you want it to be or what it wants to be. You know what I mean? So, I could go on forever just about that.
Well, no, I mean, that's something I'm totally curious about. From the perspective of a professional photographer, you walk around in life, and I wonder, are you the type of person who is looking for opportunities to put together, like, that's the shot or that's the vision that I want? Or is it more like those things, you notice something that looks a certain way and you're like, that's the inspiration for this shot? Which way does it go for you?
I would say it's both, kind of depending. Sometimes I'll have a very specific idea in mind, something I want to convey, and I'll kind of just collect resources, or say like, oh, this needs to happen this way in this type of environment. So I keep an eye out for that. But then there's other times that something will just, really inspire me. I'll see that thing and then I'll think, wait, I can facilitate some things, get some things together and make this happen. So I tend to think when I'm writing treatments or anything like that, I think in an extremely like cinematic way, and so it's not uncommon for us in here when we're sharing notes or whatever. It's like camera pans around, blah, 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 matrix this, blah, and so it's hard not to just like have that be kind of woven into anything I'm doing, right? But I think what you said is a great way. I'm looking for opportunities, and sometimes those opportunities are kind of insisting to be shared, or I'm looking for an opportunity to kind of utilize something, and tell a story with it. Right.
And you tell great stories and you take awesome photos, and that's one of the ways that I found you was because I usually am using Instagram to find people in the places that we're going to be, and found some of your photos and was like, I mean, I gotta talk with this guy, and it's very cool that I walk in the door and I just got off my Honda and I walk in the door and he's got a Honda CB 1980 sitting there ready to be restored, and we get to talk about that, which is great, and that's going to make for incredible photos. So I'm really excited to see. Yeah. Where that go? Have you ridden for like a long time, or are you just gonna get into it with this bike, or what's the deal?
Yeah. So I've done like dirt bikes. Don't tell my mom. Mom, if you're listening to this, I'm making all this up. So no, I've ridden dirt bikes in the past. Yeah. Not in any sort of like formal way or with any regularity.
Sure.
So when it comes to anything with bikes, I'm kind of green. But a big part of it was just I want to learn motors.
Okay.
And I figured like a small Honda motor is the perfect place to start.
That's what they say. It scares me. I'm one of those guys that like I ride and I can change the oil and I know certain things about my bike. But man, if you ask me to take it apart piece for piece, I'd be completely lost. Like, yeah. I can look at as many diagrams as you want. And like, I was even one of those kids that like grew up with Legos in the diagrams that made sense to me and it worked. And now it's just like, it's all gone. I don't know where the aptitude for that just disappeared at some point in my life. Maybe it's just because motors are just so complicated. As they go. So full restore is in the works, and I'll have to stay updated on that because that's a pretty exciting project.
Yeah. I think that'll be it. It's going to be kind of a group project. I put the money down for it, but everybody's interested in it.
Yeah.
Sam, who I share this space with, he asks me every day, when are you going to sell me this bike, dude?
Yeah.
And I know the second I say yes, that he'll actually buy it from me and
Right.
actually do something with it.
Right. So okay, so now you've brought us back to the Lightbox Collective, which is great because I want to hear about it. So you were telling me a little before the show, and of course we always end up spoiling some of the best bits of information before we even get to hit record. But I want to hear about what brought this space about, what the idea was here, and hopefully I'll get to share some photos with this episode so people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, right on.
And have some visuals of it. But how did this start for you? What's the idea behind this place?
So Lightbox Collective was actually an idea, kind of a mindset before it was a place. Before really even it was a production company. Myself and then a few other friends had been doing photography and videography for a while and had gotten really burned out. We had done the wedding thing, we had done senior portraits and all that, and there's just a point where you decide, there has to be something more than this, or I have to change it up enough. And we were just kind of plateauing and getting stagnant. And we just very providentially came together at the right time, and we're sharing these ideas with each other. So we thought, why don't we just kind of get together, just a community group that, of people with common interests who, like to travel, who like to just tell stories, things like that. And we just enjoy being around, and we started this thing and we called it Lightbox Collective. We thought, this is a very unique group. We can use our resources to like tell stories, to bless others, to just really hopefully just do some good things. And really to like be a light in the world in some way. And so the name Lightbox kind of came out of that, carrying light to someone. And plus it just has a very like literal and practical application.
You set up a Lightbox when I got
here.
Yeah,
so
this is the first thing we did.
So yeah, that, and it really just started as that, us still doing just our individual things, and then just kind of having this home base of a community group to come back to. And then two of the guys, Samuel and Matthew, they thought, why don't we get a shared office space so that we can, leave work at work and home at home and all kind of work together. We realized that when we're just all kind of together in the same creative space, I don't know if you're this way, but I do my best work when I'm in the room with somebody else working. We don't have 100%. To talk, we can both be on headphones. Yep. We can both be doing completely different things. But if there is work being done, I'm going to be 100 times more productive.
Right, when you feed off the energy of other people and you have the opportunity to like bounce things off other people. And I feel that exact same way. I don't have that same kind of opportunity though with the lifestyle that we've kind of picked. But luckily for me, my wife Andrea is amazing at that, and she and I work in the same space. And we've always been, I don't know if maybe codependent is the negative way to put it, but like we're just the type of people that can be in the same space as each other 24/7. It's no big deal.
You complement each other.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a positive spin.
Yeah,
right?
Probably. And then like, it takes that if you're going to move into a 35-foot space together and be like, this is what we do now. And not to mention, I'm always jealous of everybody who's got a great workplace environment with people, like-minded people who are doing the same type of work, and you get to be in that space with them, because I'm just like you. That fires me up. That gives me a lot of energy. And I don't exactly get to do it, but that's my choice, and I take that. Like,
well, I mean, you're doing it right now, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And the cool part is, like, you don't have to share a space with me. Yeah. The other guys get annoyed with me pretty often. So, I mean, you get the best part of it, and then you get to move on and find somebody else.
It's it's good to know people for short segments of time. It's like one of those things where it's like, don't go on vacation with a friend, because by the end of it, you're not going to be friends anymore. Like, it's going to go down. It's not going to be good. But you're right, having short spurts where you get to be around other people, and that's super important. And that's one of the things I'm excited about in this podcast. So we've been on the road since August. We got married and had a plan, and we were ready, and we took off and started the honeymoon in the RV. And so
awesome.
Since then, we've bounced around a bunch of different towns. We've been doing work there, but I don't get to meet anybody local in these towns. And that's just seems really unfortunate, because I'm like, I bet there was someone really cool in Rapid City, South Dakota that I didn't get to meet, because where would I have the opportunity to meet that person? Like, what would be the opportunity that I could contrive for that? And it's like, oh, well, a podcast would be a pretty solid way, not to mention giving a voice to people who just can come together in one place through sort of these travels is part of the idea. So we all form this network of like, oh, I was a part of that project, you know. But enough about me, because now I'm curious about something with travel with you. And one of the things, as I went through your Instagram and got to go check out some of the things that you've been up to, you've done a whole lot of travel and consistently do a lot of travel. And I saw like you had been to India for like a good stretch of time there, it seemed like. And one of the things I wondered, particularly with travel for you, it's something that I experience, is when you're out traveling for work, for a professional gig, do you feel like life has to go on pause when you're out traveling? Do you ever get fatigued by that act of sort of having to travel consistently? Or for you, does it add to the experience of life? I think other people deal with it differently than I did.
Yeah, I honestly, I think for me, it's just a part of it. I've kind of catered things in my life to support that, to be able to allow that a lot. So trying to just, hone down, whittle away like material possessions that I don't need, stuff like that, where I can, on short notice say like, yeah, I can take that trip. I can go and do this and all that. It's really convenient to be able to work it in a lot because now, since Lightbox did go from just a community group to an actual full-fledged production studio, we are intentional about seeking out work that we can mix some travel in too.
And you have, I imagine, I don't know your business model, you don't have to get into it, but I imagine when those opportunities come up, you guys have the opportunity to discuss who might go do that. And you can kind of decide, like, is that my gig? I'm going to go across the country now, or is that you because I've got something at home this week? Like, do you get the chance to kind of shift things around to help you out there?
Yeah, we do. We pitch a lot of these things, honestly. A lot of times you'll have a client that will say, oh, it would be great if you can do this. And they're used to people saying, well, but we're always willing to say like, okay, tell us more about that. What is your vision? You know? Cool. And Samuel in Lightbox, he grew up, doing a lot of missionary work and stuff. And he and his wife met in Hawaii, and then he's traveled, Sam, how many countries have you been to? Like 30 countries, right?
I hope he listens to this.
I'm going to make him.
Okay. That's going to be my one listen.
When he tries out my friend's isolation tank, we'll get into that here in a second. Yeah. When he tries out this isolation tank, that's what I'm going to play instead of some like meditation music. You're going
to listen to this podcast while you try to relax. It's going to be great.
No, so we look for the opportunities to be like, is this something that will be supported by us traveling, or can we make a fun trip out of this, kind of mix some business with pleasure, but yeah, like everybody kind of has their own thing going on. Two of the other guys have a wife and kids, and so just depending on what those schedules look like, or what some of our personal projects outside of core Lightbox stuff, what that looks like, we can usually shape it the way it is. And usually when you're doing a gig like that, it's not something that's just such a last minute, like, hey, we need you to go here, tell us by tomorrow. We get to kind of like make the timeline for that, something that works out for everybody. Because we love spending time with each other. We can be up here and cranking out work and be on a deadline and stressed out and everything, and maybe even a little annoyed with each other. But then we can turn around and, go sit by a fire pit and make tacos and just chill into the evening and just be best buds.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very grateful for that sort of like community. And, but yeah, we love waking up in new places. We love sharing these experiences, learning new things, and, teaching each other like as we're there. And I don't know, it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I always wanted to be the guy that could be like, oh, if you're in such and such, make sure to try out this place. And get this at this restaurant and blah, blah, blah. Make sure to take a walk down this street at sunset.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
You get to like, and that's where I was going to go next, which is like, where does it come from? Like, because not everybody has an urge to travel or can enjoy it when they're out. And certainly I've had ups and downs with travel in general. There's times where you're in a really interesting place, like Tyler, Texas is a pretty awesome place. I've been at the state park like 100 times by now. And now we're downtown in this really cool space, and people can hear the cars going on outside. There's trendy parties happening next door us. People keep looking in the window like we look like stars now, like we know what we're doing. But not every town feels like that. You know, sometimes you're in the place where it's like, okay, there's a Taco Bell here, and that's what we have going on. That's the place that there is here. And I feel like one of the hardest times is actually, particularly with flying, that was always an issue for me, where it's like, it doesn't matter if you've flown into a certain spot, now you're left without a car, you're left without, I mean, you can Uber around for how much, like go to the cool places at what cost, as opposed to now where we get to be more flexible, and I have a motorcycle and I can just zip down and do something.
Right.
So I feel like that's all about whichever city. But I'm taking us on a detour again, where what I really want to hear about is, so you like being able to listen to other people's recommendations about, like, oh, you need to go to this spot, you need to go check this out, and have those moments. And do you always feel like, as a photographer, you have to record those moments? Do you feel that pressure of, I need to be taking pictures of this? Or do you have a pretty solid experience with, like, I can be zen, I can be in the moment, I can just walk down the street? Is there a blend for you somewhere?
I think it really depends on the purpose of the trip, of course. Last time I went to New York, I didn't take out my camera once. And Mom was like, send me pictures. I said, I'm not taking any, you know, I'm on vacation.
Oh, so vacation for you would be like, I'm not going to take any pictures.
And it depends.
Yeah, okay.
You know, if I'm in a place like New York, obviously there's going to be stuff I'll eventually want to share. But then also it's like, what photo can I take there that somebody hasn't?
Yeah.
You know, so if I'm looking at it from a success sort of standpoint of like, ooh, I want to get this shot that, you know, gets hung in a gallery and sells prints and blah, blah, blah. I'm not the right guy for that. You know, I have a buddy who lives up there in Brooklyn, and Aaron Durrell, and he shoots some of the most incredible street photography, you know, stuff that I would never even fathom. And so I'm like, in a way, I'm just like, I don't even want to attempt it, you know, to a degree. But then also there's something very personal about it. You know, there's certain photos that just resonate with you. And, you know, maybe that's something that maybe you saw something in some of my work when you were kind of looking for people around here that resonated with you. I don't think that's just
going to be me. I think when people listen to this and go check out what you're doing, they're going to be pretty blown away by that stuff. And you've got a style that is very unique to you, but also plays to, I think, photography that is becoming incredibly popular and really popular styles. So you're riding that line of, this is me and this is also popular. Right on. So I think you're in a good place there. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I think what we were talking about at the beginning about, like, kind of letting something inform you, whether or not it needs to be shared, that sort of thing. So after I'm a little more comfortable in a place, I feel more capable of sharing something with it. I remember, who was it? Donald Judd, the sculptor who went down to Marfa, Texas. I don't know what your familiarity is with Marfa.
With sculptors? Oh no, with No, I don't know.
Okay,
this is like the first. We've been to Texas plenty of times before, but we're like finally exploring on this trip and kind of like wintering down here, because I'm gonna be happy if I never see another snowflake ever again in my life. So I'm like tucked away for the winter. Very quick aside, Marfa is just this incredibly quirky, awesome art town out in the middle of the desert in West Texas. You would never even, like a live Burning Man that just stays
in
there.
A way, not near as like manic. It's just really chill. And so anyway, one of the things that kicked that off was years ago, a sculptor who was based in New York. He was just tired of just being kind of in the same stew of inspiration. He said, I just need to really separate myself from this aesthetic and do the complete opposite. So he goes to Marfa, Texas, which at the time was like, you know, a stop sign and, you know, maybe a saloon and some things like that. And he went out there and he was just quiet. And it wasn't until months later that he announced, and I'm doing a terrible idea of telling this story, but it wasn't until much later that he just out of the blue announced that he was having an exhibit. Yeah. And I've read that part of that philosophy was just like, I just had to be here and let the environment and let the area tell me, you know, what I was doing here,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So with photography, I feel like it's a little less romantic than maybe, going out in the desert and coming up with some sort of like beautiful like geometric sculptures or whatever that kind of contrast that. But at the same time, I do want to feel a little familiar with my subject. I think it's a bit rude to go to a place and just immediately insist on it fulfilling something for you.
Yes.
So I want to just be present in the space and let it kind of I kind of want to get a feel for what it is, what romance is there, what sort of vibes I'm getting off of it, and how the people are and all that. And especially if you're traveling, somewhere, say like India, it would be easy to get a lot of just visually stunning stuff that a Western audience would love.
Yeah.
And to do that, you can just take a lot of pictures without permission and just take. But I don't feel good doing that. It's a very empty thing to do that, and it feels very self-serving.
Yeah.
And
okay, this is interesting to me. Before you just move past that, where does that come from for you? I feel that exact same way. And when we're in a new city every other week or whatever, which is currently what we're doing, and it's been pretty intense, I show up and I'm like, oh, I would love to get a cool picture for my Instagram. But some of these places, it's like I barely even had a minute to like explore them and see what they were all about. So I feel that, but I don't know where it comes from. Where does it come from for you, feeling like you're going somewhere and you're taking something from, whether that's the people or the place that is not yours, you're just going to borrow it and you're going to take it for your own sort of self-fulfillment or your career or whatever it might be. But where does that guilt feeling come from for you?
I don't necessarily know if guilt is the right way to put it, but just
or respect, maybe. Like
I try to maintain a certain reverence for something. I want to honor it. I feel like anything else has as much right to exist as I do, and I don't want to distill this person's existence or this food stand or this shop or whatever into simply just something that I consume just quickly so that somebody spends 6 seconds engaging with it on social media. So I want to have a story to tell. I want to be able to share the things that really touch me. And so I feel like the photo will be more meaningful when I reflect on it, as well as I'll probably just even subconsciously put more effort into doing it justice.
Yep.
When I have some connection, some attachment, and again that reverence for what this thing is. So if I want to take a portrait of of a gentleman I met in India, we sat in a upstairs cafe having tea together for 2 hours, and he was telling me all about him being a teacher and coming and sending money to his family and all this stuff, and just we really, really got to know each other and all that. And it wasn't until after that I felt comfortable to even take a photo of the guy. And there would be some interactions I would have where I think the assumption was, because I'm obviously not a local there, I think the assumption was that I just wanted like to be served, whether it be like a food stall or tea or something like that, or just some tourist experience or something. And so I try to make, in those moments, I try to make it a point to engage with that person. Ask them their name, ask them about their family, where they're from, how their day is, things like that. And not just in a placating way, not just in a surface level way, but genuinely, because that's why I'm there.
Right. You're there to experience something brand new to you. But so is travel something that you have been doing forever? Because I kind of have this theory that there's kind of two types of people who end up traveling, and the first would be someone who traveled a lot, and that's part of their life from a kid, and now they continue traveling. It's just it's ingrained. Or there's people who, I think more like me, it wasn't a big part of their life and they want it to be, and so you're almost overcoming a fear of travel by doing it or by immersing yourself, and that's something that you can be comfortable with and live in. Do you find yourself falling in one of those camps, or does my theory fall apart?
I think it's a little more the latter. maybe not so much a fear, just now I'm a little more capable to make it happen. Growing up, I was in a very active Boy Scout troop, and I had just a super awesome set of grandparents. We'd travel in their RV in the summers and everything. And,
great.
Even if it was just like a quick thing to Colorado or, let's go see Mount Rushmore. Or there was one summer where my grandparents took my cousin and I on a dinosaur vacation. So for 2 weeks, we went up to like Utah, Wyoming, all that, and visited all these like popular like dig sites for dinosaur fossils. And it was so cool. Little things like that, getting out of East Texas and seeing like actual mountains. Like I remember coming back to school and telling my friends, like, I played in the snow in July at the top of a mountain at Rocky Mountain National Park. Right. And like, no, you didn't, whatever, it was just, and I wasn't doing it to brag. I was just like, this is so much fun. And that thread has kind of continued, like wanting to share these places. And so by being a photographer, I guess deciding, like making up that that's what my job is, I can use that as an opportunity to make those trips and to do something with it rather than just, go to Mexico and sit at a resort that's, quarantined off from everything else. Mm-hmm. If I go to Mexico, I want to go and I want to interact with the people and I want to eat the food that the locals are eating and go to these places that, actually make the place what it is. I don't want some like cookie cutter, made up version of it, that sort of thing. And so, there's just this big curiosity.
When does photography come into the picture? When do you start doing that? Is it an expression of the travel, or do they just kind of evolve on their own separately?
They just kind of evolve on their own. Yeah, I do. I love to take like travel photography, mm-hmm. as you can see on the Insta and all that, but I wouldn't consider myself like a landscape photographer, because I don't have the proper filters that I would want for that. And, my setup would be laughable to somebody who actually takes like beautiful photos of landscapes. But I do try to do well with what I have in those things. But so again, just like looking for the story there. So you'll find a mix in my work of portraiture and places. And really all of those come together to just kind of, I don't know, they just represent some facet of my journey, and I guess that's where kind of the selfishness is there, the saying like, hey, I had this interaction with this person or whatever. But then even so, I want to present it in such a way that's not to say, look at me. It's more to say like, hey, look what you can do. Look where you can go. Look what's out there, and to encourage, others to find those stories themselves.
That's awesome. So it's inspiration is part of it for you.
Yeah, so much of it. I love loving people. I love to inspire people. I love to encourage people. I was the kid at birthday parties that was just as excited for the presents that my friend was getting as I would be if they were my own. Because it's just like, how cool. He has a Alan Grant action figure now.
That's great. I can't say if I felt the same way. I think for most people, it's something that evolves over time where you could be like, oh, now I can be excited for other people. I'm old enough. I've reached that level of whatever, of EQ where I can feel that and be excited for someone else. But for most kids, it's like, that thing, I want to experience that thing. I want that toy, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's way more selfish based. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing for people because, like, in my opinion, the satisfaction that you get from the ability to inspire someone else to go out or make someone excited about a place that you went should be fulfilling and exciting for you. It should be like, I feel good that I helped someone feel that way. Like that's great to me. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing that I definitely feel. So when you're out traveling, and you talked a little bit about your setup and the things that whether you have or don't have for a mm-hmm. landscape or portrait or whatever. And one of the biggest questions that I have right now, and I think it's relevant to a lot of photographers, and a lot of photographers are wondering about this, our technology is getting scary good. I mean, I'm still rocking the iPhone 7 Plus from back in the day because it just kind of makes the phone calls, which is like 90% of my job. Mm-hmm. but my wife now has the iPhone 10, and now there's even the 11 that has the 3 cameras and everything. Things are changing real quick, and amateurs are starting to take pretty solid look in photography. How do you see that playing out? To me, I think about it all the time. The fact that someone could do, I mean, even in our business, we do lots of photography and videography, and I do believe there's things we're bringing to the table that the phone can't yet bring. But at some point, are we going to be eradicated from the skill of photography and replaced by just amateur iPhone users? I mean, what do you think about the change there?
It keeps me on my toes.
Does it?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I'll find myself, just as interested in that gear, as maybe, a more just average consumer would for it. Everybody wants to take a good photo. Yeah. And I think really the thing that makes it valuable is, again, the story you're telling with it. It could be a super great photo with like a artificial depth of field and perfect lighting and all this different stuff. A lot of the automated features that some of the newer phones can provide for you. But what are you saying with it?
Okay, so for you, it's more about, as a photographer, what story am I telling? It's not about how good the colors are in that space over there. It's about what am I putting together here to tell people about what I'm doing. I'm getting so distracted because there's clearly a great party happening outside. So if you hear voices walking by, and that's cool, we're in the downtown area. It's a hop in, what is it, Tuesday night though?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, cool.
So and every once in a while I will get like that Wes Anderson shot of like, oh my goodness, look at this, like, puke yellow bowl on this green table, like, it's great, and so but yeah, it's more about, what you're doing with it, what your intention is with it. And if you're wanting to, how can I put this? If you're wanting to tell a story with it, you're going to find a compelling way to do that, and ultimately the cream will rise to the top. And so if someone, if you hand 2 people the exact same camera, the exact same setup in the exact same scene, you're going to get some variables there. Their personality is going to come through in that. And so I think that, like I said, it keeps me on my toes to just be like honest, be forthright with what I'm trying to do and who I am, and hopefully my personality is coming through that in such a way. I've had people tell me before, it's like, this just looks like one of your photos. Yeah. And that's just super flattering, and that's awesome. I was like, wow, how can I have personality, in that? And it's kind of like when Eric Clapton touches a guitar. It's like, that's Eric Clapton playing that guitar. That's Jack White playing that guitar. And there is no mistaken. My dad builds guitar amps, and he was on the phone with this guy one time, and he said, well, I'm trying to get that Eric Johnson sound. So I have his blah, blah, blah. I have his, this guitar with these pickups, and I have this amp, and I'm playing through this pedal. I even have the same brand batteries he's using, blah, blah, blah. And so my dad was trying to kind of help him, like, troubleshoot his setup a little bit, just kind of humoring him and everything. And the guy called him like 3 different times. I have this now, and I have this. I just can't get that sound. He goes, Dad said, okay, so you got the amp, you got the guitar, you got the pedal, you got this. I think I got it. Look at that picture you're using for his setup. What's that at the end of his arms? His hands. Yeah. You don't have those. Yeah. Yeah. Only he has those, and he's the only one who's ever going to be able to use them. Right. And so, and it's the same thing, and not to compare myself to Eric Johnson or some other virtuoso, but like,
I understand what you're saying.
But yeah, like I think it really comes down to like, who's telling the story. Yeah. And I hope that I have something to say. I hope that I have an audience. Again, not so that people say, look at Daniel, but just, hopefully I can be a part of conveying, inspiration and goodness and, all the positivenesses out into the world,
Yeah. Well, and I feel that exact same way, and being far more on the amateur scale of any photography that I do, Like professionally, my wife handles the photography. We go photograph the businesses, and I handle the videography. But I don't even compile the videos that go together. We have a separate person on our team who is really an artist with that kind of thing and puts together great stories. I just give them the raw footage to work with in the flattest color scheme possible so that everything can happen in the editing. But what I've noticed in my own pictures and like I mentioned to you, I've got another podcast with another person on our team where we talk about marketing, and she's great on Instagram. She takes wonderful photos and is trying to encourage me, and some of her biggest piece of advice is almost go out and see what you like about what other people are doing, and then try to make yours like theirs, which is obviously how we all learn to do something new. But you know, as advanced as now, there's AI for camera settings, which I think is fascinating, and I'm interested in it. I don't know if I'll ever try it or if I want to learn what setting to change to achieve that thing myself. But we've even got professional photographers who sell their own edited presets, if you're familiar with that. And it's like you can put all those things together, but the photo is not taken by that person. It's still, and not to mention, you can replicate and get very good at replicating for sure, but there's a certain point where they're going to be forging ahead. They're the ones who are pushing on to the next thing in photography, the next look, the next challenge. So I like the way that you put that, as like it keeps you on your toes, as opposed to it's going to tear down photography. It's like we'll be ahead of it. Like we'll move on to the next thing. We'll bring the next piece to the table, or we'll tell the story better. And I think that's a great way to look at it. I don't think that all of us have that ability to just tell a story with a photo, as opposed to replicate what someone else is doing.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of sustained fulfillment in just copying what somebody else is doing. Maybe some people enjoy that. You know, that's why you have imposter accounts and different things like that. And there will be like a lot of bigger photographers who will, you know, sometimes they'll call out, you know, somebody's like, hey, this person went to this exact same spot, got this exact same local to take this exact same kind of picture, you know, and they're selling it as some original idea or whatever. And so that does happen. Ultimately, it's one of those things where, you know, if there's like some copyright infringement and stuff like that, I think that should be pursued. But, you know, when it comes down to just like, oh, that person's Instagram photo looks just like my Instagram photo, it's like,
yeah, move on.
Big whoop.
Go for the next.
For those of you listening in, I just did the shrug with my arms, like the emoji guy. That way you get the full picture of what's going on here.
Yeah, there should be a visual component, at least on this episode for sure, because it is the coolest looking spot we've been in. So to cap that bit of the conversation, and I'm in that exact same place where I also appreciate that we learn by replicating what someone who's better than us is doing. And so like I see even the photos that you're taking, I'm like, I should try to get something like he's got the cool low light thing, and like let's give that a shot. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm not on the forefront of that. I'm not changing the game. I'm just trying to learn something new. But I mean, that's somewhere that all of us start, I think. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
As you're starting out with photography, you looked at various things. You gained inspiration from other photographers and have pulled that into your work. Is that something that ever stops? Do you ever turn off the outside noise and say like, okay, I got this? Or is it always something that's coming in? Because I'm of the latter opinion for sure, that it never really stops learning from the next person who's doing the next great thing.
I would say, especially with how common social media is, it's unavoidable. You are going to be inundated with all these different things, whether you try to seek them out or not. I mean, billboards, you know, you can't scroll through Facebook. You can't really engage with the modern, you know, world, without having some sort of something, you know, being flashed in front of you.
Imagery like never before.
It's unreal. Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I just try to be mindful of how much of it I'm consuming, and surround myself, or maybe kind of like curate an environment and a friend group that I feel will feed that in a way that I want to go. And so, yeah, I have photographers and filmmakers that I follow that I absolutely love. I think that's the best way to be inspired, to push or whatever. But inspiration is great, but you actually have to put work behind it as well. You can be inspired all day long. That doesn't get a movie made.
Right.
You know, you actually have to put in the hours. You have to put in the work and all that. And so
I think that's like anybody who is in the entrepreneur game and has listened to Gary Vee, who I'm assuming you're familiar with. His biggest message is like, I know you'll get it when you stop listening to me, because you get it, and all I'm telling you is to go after it and make it happen. And I feel that same exact way, where it's like, oh, I want to take in new information all the time, but at the same time, you have to act on it. You have to move forward with it. You have to like try something, just do something.
At any given time, I'll open up my browser and I'll have like 12 tabs open. For like, I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Until I have another 12 more that I want to, that I want to read.
Are you like a textbook overthinker?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you question things constantly. Does that manifest in your work? Like, do you fiddle with a photo for like 4 days and
too long?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other guys around here will tell you that. I do a lot of so a lot of the post-production for some of the video content we do, I typically will take on the graphics side of it. And if there has to be an animation or something like that, I am so nitpicky and so tedious. Like, oh, well, this grain effect is a little bit too chunky for me. Let me retry this. Yeah. Or, we did a project where we had a camera pass through a car window. And so then in post, I went in and basically made a CG window, that we could kind of warp through and have a little bloop, bloop, bloop effect. I think everybody knows what that sound looks like.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I spent way more time on it than any of the other team thought I should have. But at the end of the day, we got a killer effect out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tight line to be walking too, where it's like, at the same time, it gets better by degrees as I keep working on it. But at the same time, when do you just drive yourself absolutely crazy? Yeah. Sometimes you'll overthink it. I'll put something away and then come back to it next week and think, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. Yeah. Or, wow, that's terrible. What was I thinking? Right.
And so, and part of that is just you have to practice it. You have to have your hands on with it before you can become efficient at it. And so one of my biggest like lessons is, don't choose the projects that have like a really hard deadline to be the one where it's like, I'm going to teach myself this.
Oh, sure.
So there's a point where the motivation, that pushes you turns into like, okay, now I'm, bogging myself down. I'm bit off more than I can chew. So, but yeah, like I tend to never be completely satisfied with what I'm producing. And so I think going back to the storytelling aspect of it, like that's kind of a way that I've hacked my thinking in saying that like, okay, but if I tell this story, this is kind of open-ended and this photo can just be interpreted as a facet of that. And there's just like this element here that I'm presenting and letting people fill in, the details of it, so if I'm in UAE and visiting a mosque, I could take a picture of all the spires, or I could take a picture of the rack that I put my shoes on, because anybody can look at the spires, but a lot of my friends back at home, they're not used to having to take their shoes off to go into a place.
And that's part of the story of like it. And when you're there, you see the spires and you're like, yeah, I'm in that moment. But at the same time, the things you're going to remember are like the most mundane details.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will be, those are the things I carry with me about that. Those little details, what was the scent in the air? I was in a friend's bathroom the other day and they had just burned some incense and it was exactly the scent of something at one of the hostels I stayed at in India. And I was just like, I'm just going to sit here for a second and just like live in that memory,
right.
And I hope that through my storytelling that I'm able to like spark that in someone else. I snapped. Spark that in someone else. Yeah.
Peek out the.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So now we're driving at something that is like sort of a diverge of the podcast, because obviously part of this is I want to know about your work and your creativity and all of the great things that people can see, but I also want to be able to get under the surface and understand a little bit more about you. And
Okay.
and I think that it was funny actually as I was checking out your Instagram and I was like thinking about who I might want to reach out to in Tyler to be a part of the first couple episodes of the show. And there were just so many similarities I think that you and I had that I was like, I think we could have conversations about the other things. And one of the things I noticed is that you are generally really open publicly about things like anxiety, depression, and just to kind of diverge from the work, I wanted to dive into that a little bit. And I wondered specifically in talking about overthinking, fiddling with the work, seeking for perfectionism. I think all of those are things that lend right into the anxiety triangle or spiral, really is what it is. Do you find that to be true? Does your work help you to kind of, have an outlet and cope with those things, or does it make it a bit harder?
Yeah, I think it does. I think if I need that outlet, photography and filmmaking is immediately what I'm going to gravitate towards.
Right.
To try to somehow, it's like, how do you take a picture of what a broken heart feels like? Something like that. That was such a cheesy sounding line.
Oh, no, I get it.
But yeah,
that's a story to tell.
it's the simplest,
Yeah.
sort of example
Yeah.
of that. But yeah, so just finding some way to maybe make it tangible, if that makes sense. Like, it's like you can come up with a song in your head and you can just keep humming it over and over and over, but then you can actually record it and let it exist, and suddenly it's this object in front of you that you can pick up and place in things. And
It's kind of like you can compartmentalize
yeah,
what you're feeling through that. But I also think that like in personal experience can be really dangerous too, because if the work, if you're in that anxiety spiral and you're overthinking everything and you're nitpicking everything and you're just in that zone, and then you get into the work that allows you to do that and allows you to do it so much, that can be a good outlet, because it's like I'm in that headspace, so I can go there instead of internalizing everything and starting to nitpick at myself. I can nitpick that photo for a bit.
absolutely.
But then to me, that starts to create kind of like a dependency on the work, where you forget that what you actually need to learn how to do is shut down those thoughts when they start, as opposed to being able to outlet them all the time.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think balance is important. Being honest with ourselves with what is cathartic for us, but then also, not using something as a crutch, not seeking something out to stay stagnant.
Yeah.
I think growth is, what any of us want through something, but it's also easy to become content in misery or in depression or sadness or something. Sometimes because it's all we know. Sometimes there's more fear on the other side of just like, I know there's a lot of work to do to get me to that place, and so I just don't feel like it right now. That sort of thing. So I think I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like one of those fleeting thoughts that I have every once in a while, but sometimes I don't necessarily put like a name to it, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
It's interesting too. Just like anybody else, I go through those bouts of like, I've got a couple days where, man, I'm just down. I can't get it together. And then what's funny is sort of, I feel that easing off at a certain point, and I feel lucky in that at a certain point, I don't live in that forever. Like for me, it starts to ease off and I'm not feeling so depressed anymore. But the first thing I recognize is that what shut down during that time was all of the things that I need to be doing to actually fix it. So the first part of my brain that seems to shut down is the one that's like, oh, well, if you want to feel better, you need to go work out. Like you need to get outside. You need to take a day off work, and instead that's just that oversight kind of is the first thing to go for me. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'll just bury myself in work for 4 days. And why am I not feeling better? Like, because I haven't gone outside, I haven't exercised for a minute.
What have I eaten?
What did I eat? Yeah.
How much time have I spent looking at my phone? Like little things like that.
And that's the eating one is so classic too,
man,
because it's like you want the comfort food that just makes you feel good, but that's not what's good for you. I just learned that DQ is Texas stop sign. Is that a thing here?
Well, that's what they tell you.
Does that bother you as a local for me to
so,
bring it up?
So Whataburger is, if you're wanting to eat fast food, which I'm not necessarily condoning, but if you are, the Texas experience is Whataburger.
Okay.
Because DQ isn't even a Texan brand.
Well, I thought that was strange too, but at the same time, being here in Tyler, the one thing I noticed on every corner is a Dairy Queen.
Oh,
I was
goodness.
like, this
Yeah.
is a smallish town to have this many Dairy Queens.
There's tons of banks and tons of churches, and then maybe third would be vape shops. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever the
No, yeah. So it's just it's that Texas thing where we try to take everything and make it.
A
You know, it's
Texas
like, oh,
thing.
it's the Texas edition,
Which is
of the,
crazy
you know.
too, because this state is a freaking country. It is
Oh.
massive. I'm always blown away when we drive through. It's just like, oh my god! And there's so many different environments too. Like the
yeah.
Dallas Fort Worth scene is totally different from Tyler, which is totally different, I'm sure, from Houston. As soon as I'll be there at some point, I'm sure. Which is totally different from the sort of like Oklahoma border stuff, which I've been up there too. And everything feels very different. So to be like, this is Texas, it's so unrealistic.
Yeah,
too.
I'm not a big proponent of pride, you know, just as a general like
Sure.
thing, because that can get toxic really quick. But there is a lot that, you know, to be proud of, I guess, being in a place like this. You know, not to go too deep into it. I don't think anybody's better than anyone else for where they're born, but like, you know, like calling Texas home is something that's fun. You know, we have a beach-ish. We have hill country, we have forests, we have deserts,
Yeah.
we have kind of miniature mountains if you get way out west over in the Big Bend area and everything. So there's so many just faces, you know, of Texas. And there's such a rich history with a lot of things, you know, the Alamo, sure,
Yeah.
that's cool, right? There's just a lot happening. And then there's the whole romantic Wild West vibe of it and all that. It's, yeah, there's so much here that it's just the perfect storm for people to just be really happy about it.
Sure.
You know?
And I feel that one of my favorite things about getting in the RV and making that a lifestyle change is that instead of going, we don't tend to go to the places that are the tourist destination. We're not going to the place that is the most popular spot we could go park our RV. Instead, it's really way more for us about going somewhere that we might not expect and then learning what's great about that place. And certainly, I mean, that's how it's been here in Tyler. It's just an awesome town, and I only get to spend 2 weeks here, but I'm gonna be back because
Yeah, right on.
I definitely need to. And now I think we have state parks passes in 3 different states now because we
Nice.
just end up like the annual passes everywhere we go because we end up going to all these different state parks and stuff. But I also feel like displaced in terms of having that pride of where I'm from because I grew up in Illinois cornland, and I have a certain amount of pride for that, living in a 2 stoplight town. I think we had 2 stoplights. There was one by the highway.
Fancy.
And, you know, I worked in the corn and did all that stuff. But then we moved out to Denver, and I still kind of think of that as home because we lived there for a little over 2 years, I want to say. And there is a ton of pride in Colorado, obviously, too. I mean, in no other state, I don't think, I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong. I've never been to another state where people wear the state flag on their shirt quite as often as in Colorado, because there is a lot of pride. And there's bumper stickers that say native, and it's like that you grew up in Colorado. Obviously, it's so overcrowded now.
Yeah.
That people are like, oh no, I'm from here. I'm from the Rockies.
Yeah.
That's where I come from.
Yeah, and I mean, you will see a lot of that in Texas as well. And there's this, I'm going to call it playful, like this playful rivalry between it. You know, there's a Texan goes to Colorado and they'll say, hey, go back home. You know, and I imagine there's something about like, these are our mountains, you know, and whatever. I guess there's something about that. You don't want too many people just to swarm it and make it into that just like consumed sort of thing. You want people to appreciate it maybe the way you can appreciate it.
Right.
And I hope, like, that's my optimistic side. I hope that's what it really stems from, is like, yeah, these are great. Please, like, respect them, you know, and whatever. And so, yeah, that is interesting. Like you said, just being in a place 2 years, but it becoming home, you know, and
it was for us, it was where we lived on our own and had our own place.
Yeah.
And really, and grew our business there. It was like for a long time we had started up the business and we knew that we needed to get to, okay, this many, you know, clients in order to afford an apartment in Denver, which is its own kind of struggle.
Yeah,
and
I
so
imagine.
going out there was like, that was the landmark. That was like, if we can do that, we can get to Colorado. And that for us is really what made Colorado home. But now in every town we go to, we are outsiders. But I also feel good about it because I'm not the outsider that people are worried about, because I'm not coming and trying to change a place to make it my own. I'm coming to experience that place. So like even in Texas, which is having insane growth right now, I want to say that I saw something about Austin being like the #1 place that people are moving to, millennials specifically are moving to, is just growing like crazy.
Yeah.
And I want to go see it, but am I going to live there and change it and try to make it something that's my own? I won't really be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that it's kind of like a fun rivalry that different places have, where it's like, this is where I'm from, this is my town, you know, or this is my state in this case.
Yeah.
But needless to say, so my diverge here was, where did we start? The Dairy Queen bit. A couple minutes behind us there. We ended up, we did go to Dairy Queen while we were here, which I'm a little proud of and a little ashamed of, because we kind of like, we cook everything mostly from scratch and are super on the health train. But then there was just one night where it was like, you know, we're here, it's a good time. We got nothing going on tomorrow, so if we're stuck on the toilet all day, it's fine. You know, we do let's go get some Dairy Queen. But I think I got on that because we were talking about like, I think we were talking about comfort foods is what I was really trying to drive at there. But for you, do you ever find that line between I need to do something, I guess, to like improve my condition in this moment, my mental health in this moment, or whatever? Do you jump right into the healthier things and start enacting those, or do you find that it's easier to just like stay in the comfort zone and continue to kind of band-aid those bad feelings?
I don't turn to typical vices. I don't smoke. I don't drink. Any of those things that may be that are usually associated with like stress or anxiety or something like that. But you know, it is easy for me to spend too much time like on my phone, like on social media or something. Just something right there, you know, wanting a connection.
It's just the big dopamine hit when you pull your phone out and it's like, wow, I feel good for some reason.
Right. Yeah. And so one of my biggest struggles is like with loneliness, even in the midst of you know, having a lot of friends like around here in the community and all that. Sometimes I can be in a room full of people and still feel very alone. And so, you know, there will be times like, oh, it's easy to just engage with someone. It's easy to, you know, shoot a text or have a conversation on Facebook or whatever. And, you know, sometimes I can make it meaningful, but sometimes it's just memes or whatever, you know. And so it's a slippery slope to be to have something that accessible, you know, like you can distract yourself for the rest of your life if you want to, and there are plenty of ways to do it, you know. And goodness, when Disney Plus comes out, that's going to be terrible for me, right?
Oh, okay. What's the Disney thing for you?
Well, it's because they're going to have like the exclusive Star Wars content, of course.
Oh,
you know,
I gotcha.
so but yeah, so but no, like anything like that, I actually stopped buying video game systems. I think the last new video game system I had bought was a PlayStation 2.
Oh, that's a while ago.
A long time ago.
As of this episode in 2019, it's been a hot minute since the PS2 came out.
And so, but I realized that if I became like the guy that collects video games or whatever, I would spend too much time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to have like games on my phone, like little things like that can just do absolutely nothing but waste my time.
Mm-hmm. Then what do you do instead?
So
because and the reason I ask that is because I can tell how deep photography is for you. And is that the thing that you always turn to as being productive, as being fulfilling or creative, or do you have other outlets for that? I
like to play guitar. I don't think I'm super good at it. Like I can't read music and I don't know what chords are, but I feel like I can express myself very well through that, just kind of having it become an extension of how I'm feeling.
Do you
or what
write
I'm doing.
music too, or do you just play songs?
I hum stuff into the recorder on my phone.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
and hope that it becomes something. And so I'll come up with fun ideas and everything. but the music and photography thing, it converges for me too. I do a lot of concert photography, and so which is a really fun way to combine my two passions of music and photo. But yeah, so guitar I think is one that I pick up really quick, even if I'm just, if I'm feeling forlorn in the morning, or if I've had a stressful day, or even if I'm happy or whatever, I can just pick up the guitar and I can find a way to voice things that I may not have a word for. And so that's a really good one. I've been into running lately, which is, I never thought I would like running.
Oh, I'm in the same boat right now, brother. My dad is a hardcore runner, has run several marathons, would run a marathon a day if his knee wasn't kind of getting shot. But I grew up running, and I even ended up doing like a half marathon when I was really young.
Awesome.
But then I was like, I'm so over running. And now all of a sudden it's just back, and there's some urge to do it. And you know what? I think one of the things that brought it back was I started finally learning the real stuff about like barefoot running, which I don't know if you're in that camp or which side of the equation you fall on. But I tried that in high school and actually like broke my leg from a stress fracture.
Wow.
Because I was doing it all wrong.
Oh, yikes.
So, but now I found these shoes, and this is so funny that I saw that Lightbox Collective had posted something about Zero shoes, who are actually out in Broomfield, which is really close to where I used to live. And I wore my Zero shoes.
Yes, I was just noticing those.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
These are the boots.
I have mine.
Oh, sweet.
I'm holding my shoes up to the microphone for the listeners at home or in your car.
But yeah, and the thing that got me back into it was I found that they had these like running sandals, and I really ended up getting into those. And I just ran the trail out at Tyler State Park the other day and just smoked my toe on a route, which was really cool.
They're gnarly out there.
Yeah. But it was just like one of those little things that just like tipped me over into like, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe I should go run and pick that back up again.
Yeah.
Do you have a great state park here, but you've also got plenty of awesome downtown areas and things to run in. What kind of running are you doing? Are you doing the super heavy long distance stuff, or you like to keep it chill?
I like to kind of keep it chill. I'm still fairly new to it. I picked the best time to start, which was in the dead of Texas summer.
Sure.
So 110 degree days, middle, So
do you get up early enough to go beat it, or do you just
sometimes?
Say, screw it? Yeah.
Or I will, I'll do it in the evening, and of course with the time change that just happened, evening comes at like lunchtime now. So.
Oh yeah, it's pitch black and it's probably like 7 right now.
But yeah, so with it being cooler, it's definitely been better. But also, like the heat doesn't super bother me. With the running, it definitely makes things harder, but not enough to say that I'm not going to go do that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'll do, between like 3 and 5 miles at a time. Usually is kind of what my regular run would look like. And on the good weeks, I'm doing that maybe 5 times a week. If it's like this, this past week, it's maybe like 2 times a week. But
what do you listen to when you run? This always fascinates me, and I have a fight with my wife about the proper thing to listen to when you work out.
Oh yeah, well, so most often I'm running with some friends. There's a coffee shop across the street from here that we'll meet up at and usually run from there. But my roommate, who actually works at that coffee shop and is a photographer himself, he's really into running. And so he's taught me quite a bit. I have another friend, Robert, he's one of these nuts that will like run the Grand Canyon.
Sure.
Like he ran from the South Rim to the north and back to the south all in like, 18 hours, something like that. I'm probably not doing it justice. It was probably shorter than that, honestly, but just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two guys who know a lot about actually running well, and like the proper ways to like, scale your workouts and all that. So I've learned a lot with them. So if I'm with them, I'm obviously not going to have anything in. We're going to be like talking with each other. Yeah. Absolutely. There's that bit of it. But yeah, if I'm doing like an early morning run, it's usually something a little more chill. I feel like I get more exhausted if I'm just listening to like heavy metal or something like that too much.
I feel that same way.
Yeah.
I feel that same way. Although, well, sometimes you're just in the mood for like the hard rock, whatever it might be.
So I don't know, a lot of like Radiohead and Tom York, like that
Okay.
sort of thing, where I can, you know, maybe there is like some sort of like heavy percussive element, but it's not just brute force of a sound. You know,
Yeah.
it's something that just kind of like that I can kind of time my breathing to or my steps to.
I get made fun of because the thing I listen to when I'm working out the heaviest is like podcasts and audiobooks.
That's
And
awesome.
everybody's like, how can you get charged up as you're doing that? And I'm like, I'm just so immersed in whatever the conversation is that like nothing affects me. And so like
Yeah.
I'll be like lifting hard and I'm listening to like, well, usually my go-to is like Dax Shepard because I'm obsessed with Armchair
Oh yeah.
Expert, and that's I want to like tribute the entire podcast I'm doing here to that show. But that gets me the most pumped up, and someone's telling like a great story. That's what I want to be listening to. But I know I'm in the less popular side of that
Yeah.
debate.
Well, and I think that's the same function that's going on when I'm running with the guys. Like
Sure.
we can talk about stuff,
Hmm.
and suddenly I'm not concerned about how steep the hill is,
Right.
or if you know if we are talking about it. You know, it's easier to go up a hill when you have two other guys that are like, man, this is awful.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but we can do it, that sort of thing,
Right.
versus you know just doing it by yourself. And so yeah, engaging in that conversation, if you can kind of you know, kind of derail a little bit and you know, let your body do what it's doing while your brain is focused on something else. And then also I feel like running is a great time to consume information because I'm so like contemplative when I'm
Mhm.
running. You know, and even if I am listening to music, I can still like think very clearly and specifically about things.
Hmm.
So I think I need to try some podcasts. I might
Yeah.
take you up on that.
Yeah, give it a
On
shot.
that inspiration. There, yeah.
I'll send you my favorites because I'm hooked on so many. At this point, it's getting really dangerous. Now I have two, which is just going to fuel the addiction further. So in all the podcasts that I'm listening to, there's always a through line, which is something that I really like about this podcast and things that I want to do with it, which is not only do I have the chance to be in these different towns and then finally meet someone. Like, okay, here's a real person from this town that's going to tell me about their story and their life and their business and all those different great things. But we also get to talk about some things that I think are more universal because through the other podcasts that I listen to, again, my hero Dax Shepard, who's talking about issues that guys have and insecurities that he's had and ways that he's handled those things. I really like pushing into those territories, and I think that everybody has their own line for that, and I certainly do. Things that I will share and won't share. And you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. There's only so much I'm going to say,
Yeah.
because I need my clients to believe that I have a certain handle on
Yeah.
myself. But I did find that really cool, and I appreciate you diving into it a little bit more. Just I am not nearly as open about anything, depression, anxiety, whatever struggles that I've got, as you have been on your own Instagram. And I think that's really cool. Is that something that was pretty widely accepted in your family? Like, do you have a really open family that talks about that kind of stuff? Did you grow up with that? Your grandparents took you on travels? Was grandpa pretty, self-reflective and able to do that? Or is that something you had to kind of learn on your own?
Yeah, I feel like I have a great support system, an absolutely amazing family that I'm super grateful for. Um, even growing up without much means, you know, we still, it was one of those things, we have each other, and there was a lot of just open discussion, you know. So there would be there's the commercials that are they kind of seem cheesy or whatever. It's like, talk to your children about drugs or little things like that. But my parents were the ones that were like pretty straightforward with that
Sure.
stuff, you know. So mom would be like, don't drink, don't go to that party, don't blah blah blah. But if you ever do, you can call me. You know, that sort of thing. So it was like this, here's what you should do as a junior high schooler or whatever. But also, like, it's not the end of the world. Like, I love you. I'm going to give you a place to land.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And so I grew up with a good security that was there. I always felt comfortable sharing. And I was surrounded by some really awesome male role models who were good at sharing as well. And I really, really value that. I think, not to go off on too far of a tangent, but actually this could be the whole thing, is like, I think that this is such an opportunity, a turning point for young men in this generation, in this time in history, to take ownership of emotions, to be more open and honest with how they're feeling, and not just that, not just say like, here it is and just throw it at the wall, but then also say, okay, what am I going to do about this?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I had a terrible example. Maybe I grew up surrounded by, you know, um, womanizing or racism or something like that. It's like, so do I say that's all I know and then keep engaging in that, or do I break the cycle?
Yeah.
Something like that. So I think it's very, very important to be open with ourselves and to be honest with each other, and finding the proper boundaries that are comfortable for everybody, but also not shying away from it because it's difficult, and not shying away from it because you're afraid that you'll upset that person.
Yeah.
But if you see somebody hurting somebody, obviously, like, call it out. If this man is being inappropriate with someone, call him out on it. That sort of thing. I'm a big proponent of that. But yeah, on the cathartic side of it, like, just being able to safely share, I think, is what a lot of people want. A lot of people just want to be listened to.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be heard. And there can be a selfish element to that, but there's also a fine line between selfishness and self-interest. And I think self-interest is a very, very good thing that we don't pay enough attention to. And that actually is the part of us that says, I want this not just to have something, but because it will sustain me, because it will help me grow, and it will help me become more than what I am. It's like, don't come to the table with problems, come with solutions.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And it should kind of take it back to, like, the business understanding.
Well, I was
stuff.
thinking specifically because when we started talking about how you wanted your photos to, like, inspire people to go see something or to go travel or to have an experience, and I brought up that same exact point, which is just, for me, it's fine that you take something away from helping somebody else. You should learn and grow and change and have a good feeling for yourself that if you were able to accomplish something there. That I think that's hard. But right now, all of the things you're saying, it's how gender as a whole, but then also masculinity and being a man is being completely redefined all around us.
Yes.
And as men in the similar age group, I have to assume, we grew up almost at the tail end of one system, moving
Yes.
into something brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, my cousin, who is in his freshman year of college now, and I've always been a huge fan of his. He has such a better sense of how to interact in this new paradigm than I ever did, and he doesn't have to necessarily learn a whole bunch of new things. He was able to a little bit grow up with this new system, and it's something I see kids coming up now who are like, they just get it. There's nothing to struggle with. And even if you are struggling with how to define what is being a man, how much do I share versus how much do I solve, how much can I have problems between how much do I just know what I'm doing, that's something that isn't even looked well upon now, to struggle with that. But it seems like one thing that really grounds you is having a really solid community of people around you. You've got your people in your collective, and you've got friends who you can, I assume, talk pretty openly with about
Completely.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How does that impact, my next question for you, relationships? How does that change the dating game for you with a group of people like that who you can go to and talk with?
I think that so having that environment helps me to know myself better. There's an accountability that's built in on that. I'm certainly not just winning at the dating game right now, but I'm an overthinker, and I'm in my own head a lot, and
Sure.
I want to be available to someone, and not just focused on a lot of, frustrating things that maybe I'm thinking of. So little things like that. So I try to pace myself when it comes to like any sort of pursuit like that. But
Are you like a serial monogamist, or are you someone who has had a bunch of short relationships?
um, I would say I've had three like strong, meaningful relationships
Hmm.
in my life, and I've had a lot of little distractions. And wow, I'm really glad we're covering this because
Oh,
this
this is
is
good. This is where
this
I'm
is
going.
something that I would not have volunteered to talk to, but I'm
Oh,
really glad
good.
it's to talk about. But I'm glad it's here because again, and I hope anybody listening to this, I hope that they can take something from this because my goodness, it's like yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, but in that good kind of
Well, I
uncomfortable
mean, I hope I'm
to
not
talk about this.
pushing
Yeah.
your limits too
No,
far, because the thing is, I only have a limited perspective. I met my soulmate when I think I was 17,
that's awesome.
um, in my freshman year of college. No, I must have been 18 by then. I don't, no, I was 17. And that's when we met and have been together since, and we're together in college. And, that's always been super clear for me. But then I'm fascinated by how things are changing right now and what dating looks like. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so on the outside, looking in. That's just like that's really, um, it's so different now. And
Yeah.
we didn't meet online. We met because we were in the same place.
Hmm.
And I feel really lucky about that. But it's got to be a whole different world. And it's someone who does a lot of traveling too. You are meeting people everywhere.
Hmm.
So that's why I push into this for a
Yeah,
moment.
no, that's a great question.
We
Yeah,
got
I
two
think
opposite perspectives now.
yeah, no, well, and part of it is just who you are. It's like you you had a very fortunate, happenstance of y'all crossing paths like that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm not necessarily a believer in like, oh, there's that one person out there
Yeah.
for you, but also I do believe that certain conditions have to be present for like-minded people to kind of vibe like that. So
Right.
and that's super cool. And there's part of me that wishes I had that story, of just that because like I said earlier, I struggle with loneliness. I love people being around.
Hmm.
I love sharing energy with someone.
So are you fulfilled by that when you're in that relationship? Does someone fulfill that lonely meter and you don't?
In a way. So in the past, it required me to face like codependency and insecurity. Sometimes it was just as easy as like, oh, I have this person now to like latch on to.
Right.
And whatever they want is what I want, and by doing things for them is the way to show them I love them and everything. And it's not so simple as that, and it becomes just this very frustrating house of cards to hold up. And I realized I didn't have enough identity, enough confidence in myself. And also there was some of it that was just kind of informed by um, I don't know, some what I feel is like very legalistic doctrine, that I'd kind of been brought up around, feelings of guilt and right versus wrong, that sort of thing. And um, which is to say, I don't denounce those things, but at the same time, I feel like the lens that I was given for some of those things, when it comes to like spirituality and matters of like moral and ethical stuff. I feel like the lens that I was given, or that I don't want to say given, um, the lens I grew up looking through wasn't necessarily the one that I would subscribe to.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm pushing right on a sensitive
Yeah.
subject here, and I can tell that because um because you are clearly really like close to your family,
Mm.
and your upbringing is something I can tell you're grateful for. And mom did hear that you rode dirt bikes already, if she's listening to the podcast. So we've already let mom down a little bit. So I don't think, um, but I think in my situation, I was really fortunate in that when we met so young, I wasn't locked down to who I was. I was
Yeah.
17 years old. There was a lot of change that has to happen, that continues to happen to this day, because I don't ever want to stop changing. But
Hmm.
what I've been really lucky in is that Andrea and I have always changed together, and so
Yes.
we found, and it doesn't always line up perfectly. So I might figure something out and she figures it out a couple months later, and then we're right back on the same page with it. And there's friction until then. Or she figures something out and I'm still not ready to be there yet. But I've always felt really lucky that our trajectories really lined up, and we were able to learn things from outside of our relationship and let those change us and help us grow, and then bring that back together. And it's like, oh, you actually feel the same way, and we're starting to change together. But I think that that's got to be one of the hardest parts. And meeting so young, that was really lucky, because there was a good chance we end up on opposite sides of the fence on so many different things. And to me, I understand when two people in a relationship clash on fundamental things. I can understand how that can still work. But for me, it's always been better that we've been on the same page about so many things ideologically. That's been a little bit crucial for us. But okay, so this is good, because I'm pushing on something sensitive here. And I can tell that, which is perfect. I'm just
you want to watch me squirm?
Show up to your business, and you've set up a light and been so gracious. And then I'm like, all right, let's talk about uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
But I also feel that same level of being in a relationship as sort of fulfilling that lonely meter. But it's dangerous too, because then you start to default as like you lose identity, and you gain that codependence and things like that. Which for us has always been about, we need to have our own projects. We need to have our own interests and our own things. We come together and share those, but try not to have all of the same things in common all the time.
Right. Yeah. You have to keep it interesting, have some variety in there.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like, it is it's a good opportunity to make mistakes, being kind of in this era of relationships, just kind of the way society allows them to facilitate. We have so many options of seeing people and meeting people and knowing about people before we actually know them. And so we can kind of shape ideas, like our idea of that person, or we can put out an idea about ourselves that we want everybody to perceive. And so, which ultimately can come down to dishonesty. Like if you're being facetious with it, and there's a way to succeed in those things, not necessarily towards good things. Because I don't think hurting people and being dishonest and lying is ever the way. But
well, it foils itself in the end.
Oh,
because if
absolutely.
you get in a relationship and you have curated an image of yourself, that person's gonna see the real you at some point.
Yes.
Or either maybe they will, maybe they won't, but it won't really be a meaningful relationship until they do.
Exactly.
You're just gonna be having to live in sort of a mask of yourself instead of.
Yeah. And if you're encouraging in someone, you're a narcissist, and you're encouraging them to be codependent on you, and there's like this gross power dynamic there, and it's just, there's nothing fulfilling there. It's pointless, is what it is. It's only feeding bad things if you're in it for that. But I have some extremely close friends, some best friends that I've met just on the internet. And I mean, you and I met because of social media.
Absolutely.
How cool is that?
Look at that.
So, so again, there's some really cool things there. Kind of to the relationships question, being an overthinker has, I don't know, maybe I did meet my Andrea at one point.
Sure.
But maybe I was overthinking either that relationship, or I was overthinking something that had nothing to do with the relationship, and maybe I neglected that or something.
Well, I'm still of the mindset, of the positive mindset when it comes to that, which is that like it can't have been that wasn't your Andrea at the time.
Maybe not. Yeah,
because
I see that
the timing is a part of the equation too.
I think so. Yeah. And then there's a part of me that, you had an interesting thing about like, I wasn't who I hadn't become really myself yet.
Right.
And that's an awesome optimistic way. It's like, here's a blank page. Look, I get to write this story with somebody. And I love that. Me, I think I've always thought of it more of I want to have an idea of who I am before I lock myself into something and then changes are insisted upon me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that fear comes from a very unhealthy example of what that could look like. I grew up in a small town outside of here, about an hour away, and there's a lot of wonderful people that I still know there, but I also witnessed a lot of people who were in unfulfilling relationships because they were bored.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, oh, both of us work at the warehouse and we have a similar schedule and whatever. You know, maybe the lottery like gets, you know, a couple of those relationships right, and some of those people align on some things, but a lot of times I would see people who were getting married too early, or maybe starting a family before they really had anything established.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you know it, like you were saying, you're off on those two completely different trajectories.
Yep.
You know, or
and then when you bring kids into the picture,
yeah, and
everything is complicated.
Yeah,
100-fold.
it's affecting a lot more people than just yourself. And so I always wanted to be careful not to be stuck in a thing. So I'd kind of tell myself, like, I want to be on the way to who I'm becoming before I invite somebody along.
Sure.
You know, and but in the last few years, I'm like, man, I'm really ready to invite somebody to come along.
Right.
And I'm just I'm such an overthinker that it's hard for me to be clear on what that looks like.
It's a risk. It's a risk when you say,
yeah.
I'm gonna try this with you, and I totally get that. I mean, it's funny for me because I was so young when we met, but that doesn't mean that I haven't always evaluated our relationship to that standard of like, is this still working? Is this still making sense? And for me, and I don't think that this is true for every person, but for me, like that, the highest purpose that I have is that relationship. That is the thing that defines my life, is love there. But I also see people who, and it's hard for me to relate to because I don't necessarily feel that same way, who put other things above that. They have other major goals in their life this would be more important. Do you know where you stand on that equation? Or maybe you haven't had to ask that question yet, whether the relationship comes before the work or the art or different things like that.
So I would definitely say, you know, like family would come before work, that sort of thing.
Right.
But yeah, so in just like in a relationship, like a romantic, like a loving relationship, I think you kind of have to play it out a little bit. It's easy at the beginning to definitely prioritize the relationship itself, but you have to be wise about how you're parsing that. And, you know, you don't want to establish a dynamic in that relationship that is unsustainable, you know, which ultimately would circle back to like creating a codependency there. I think that's the biggest like pitfall for the beginning of a relationship. The way you kind of establish what your interactions are together. So I know that I desire that sort of companionship, and to be in kind of to have a I don't know, just to be on a team, you know, to like to do something with someone, to share things together. You know, I can go to some amazing places. You know, we took a trip to Iceland as Lightbox. It was actually like our first big trip we had done together. We went for 10 days in Iceland, and there were 7 of us, 3 couples and me.
Yeah,
and
you were 7th wheel.
Yeah, and so and I had an absolute blast.
Right.
But there was a time where I was like, wow, this lighthouse and sunset would be really great if I was, you know, holding hands with somebody while watching it.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. You know, this concert is incredible, but who do I have to share it with? I'm here by myself. You know, little things like that. I want to share with people, you know, and I want to share with somebody who knows me, who knows me well, who's like, I thought of you, like this is something that I know is you. This sounds like you. I knew this would be your thing, that sort of thing. Like, as I told it one person, Um, I want to meet somebody who prays for me. Somebody who maybe doesn't even know me yet, and has this idea of what loving me looks like. I'm actually getting teary-eyed talking about this because
Well,
it means so much to me.
I can sense it. I think the listeners will be able to sense it too. And you're right. I mean, things for me are magnified tenfold when I have that I can share with Andrea.
Yeah.
It's whatever the experience is, or tell her the story, or hopefully she's there to experience it with me. But I also think now I'm kind of intrigued by, you have clearly a tight knit group, a social group here in Texas, and also you're close to your family.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think for the two of us, when we met, we hadn't formed those types of groups yet, and so it was a little bit easier to be deep into that relationship. And of course, it was always a question, especially in college, when everybody wants to be your friend all the time, and there's constantly things happening around you, but instead you're opting to be, with your girlfriend
Mm-hmm.
in that moment instead, and that was always challenging. But I think it would be even harder for a friend group to even see that change in you when you start to pick the person you love over the friend group and those activities and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I think I was able to avoid like a solid chunk of. But what you're saying there too, not to go way too far off the point here, the idea that there's someone who hasn't met you yet but is hoping for someone like you, or hoping for you, and they don't even know that implies to me that you actually do buy into the concept of like a soulmate, of someone who is somewhat perfect for you, that's out there.
I would say that maybe not a single person, but like a mindset,
Gotcha.
a heart for that.
Okay.
And I think I feel like that's why people can find love like in their hometown, or they can find love, after they've moved 15 cities and finally, get with someone. And, yeah, I really do believe it's, some of it does have to do with just like randomness and if you want to call it luck or fortune or whatever, but also just kind of, yeah, what investment are you willing to make in someone? And do you have the best intentions when loving this person, when seeking this person out? I feel like having the right heart approaching that that will set you up for success with it. What is your goal there? And, talking about the friend groups, and I'm glad it keeps circling back to that, because I have such an awesome friend group. I think I already said that, but like people that I can tell anything to, especially like strong male friendships.
Yeah.
Guys that I can look in the eye and say I love you, and give them a big hug and stuff, and just a lot of things that maybe previous generations may not have been so open and accepting of. And I've found that so many of the toxic behaviors and insecurities that are typically associated with men, I find that so many of those are diminished and disappear when I have those things present in my life, when I have these men that I can talk to about that, that I can work through these problems. And it's like, hey, our fathers and their father and their father and their father handled it this way. And we're getting to a point where we realize that's not so good anymore. That may not be the right way, that we're doing stuff. And, what is, just being respectful of others, and not just in a placating, like tip your hat and open doors and whatever, but like really like loving people, for who they are, especially like the way we treat women, it's just such a conversation that can't be had too much, because of, just the dynamics of humanity. There's just been such an opportunity for men to just ride that out and not address things. And it's like, it's such an awesome thing that we have a voice. You get to make a podcast, or you get to make Instagrams. We get to do all these things. We have these platforms to say and encourage the best in each other. and
Right.
we get to have these conversations, not such a, it's like, oh, this person disagrees, I'm going to completely shut them down, but more of a like, okay, let's hear this out. Let's parse this. Let's think about it. Let's put it out on the table. I'm a verbal processor, as is quite obvious through this podcast, and so sometimes I just have to say something and hear how stupid it is before I'm like, oh no, actually not that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fortunate that, again, that friend group is one that is a safe place to do that.
Right. Well, I think that fuels that is a system that can fuel itself in really nice ways, because I think that there's a expectation of masculinity that is the really hard exterior and the really tough face toward everything, including people who, if they let their guard down, you can let yours down too. And we're almost in a constant, like, I'm holding my gun to you and you're holding your gun to me, and as long as we lower them at the same time, like, we'll end up being okay here.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, that's one of the reasons for me that starting a podcast where I can talk about that kind of thing is really important, because I still believe as a man that there is some sort of inherent strength that I have, that I get out of masculinity, and I don't want to ditch it entirely, but it's turning that strength on its head instead of sort of being so, what's what I'm looking for, guarded and tough with everyone around me. It's to be strong for other people who can actually then be able to speak up and say things. So if I can strongly say, I'm going to be open about these things that I struggle with and these insecurities and these emotions, then everyone around me can do that too. So I can still lend that same strength, but in a totally different way. That's something that's always been really important to me. And when you've got your friend group and you're all doing it at the same time, it's a good system to be able to do that. Because for me, I think that the thing that shuts us down the most and makes us not want to talk about these things and try to be tough and internalize everything really is just the fear of being hurt by other people. Where if we can kind of muster the strength to not have that fear and to not let something hurt us, then we can actually start turning the conversation completely on its head. And you're right. I mean, I think the rise of the ability for a guy like me to create a podcast that someone might listen to, and if one person listens to it and it takes something away and is like, oh, I could see that as a guy, I can kind of get on board with that. Or even as a woman could listen and be like, oh, maybe there are some guys out there who are trying to change things a bit.
Yeah.
That becomes important. But the thing that makes me the most nervous is the inability for people to have the conversation now. I'm consistently scared when I see people post things like, if you don't agree with this, unfriend me right now. I have such a hard time with that because I think that the best thing we can actually do is talk, is to try and recognize that there isn't one. Quite often in most of the major conversations we're having these days, there's not just one perfect answer. There's likely something in the middle, and that's where I land all the time. It's right in the middle of any conversation.
Being a chronic overthinker, I hate the term devil's advocate, because typically you find that in somebody that's being difficult just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But I do want to try to see where someone is coming from. Obviously there's boundaries with that. There's some very there's obvious hard boundaries
going on right now. There's full on Nazis. It's
I'm not gonna sit there and say well, let me hear you out. Obviously. But when it does come to even let's talk about that conversation of of the vulnerability and the masculinity and stuff like that, we can, you have your perspective, I have mine, and we can hash it out and kind of see what that looks like.
And not to mention, neither of us necessarily has to change each other's opinion.
Right.
We can still walk away as friends and be like, oh man, I feel completely different about that thing. Because at the end of the day, as long as you're not telling me what to do and I'm not telling you what to do, why does it matter past that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think listening is definitely something that we need to be mindful to do, because again, there are so many opportunities to just be heard, to just say something. And so I could spend a lot of time just saying and saying and saying and saying, but if I'm not open and receiving that, then it is that selfishness that's coming back up. So, and then again, to bring it even more for full circle, I feel like there's just all these rings kind of around this conversation that we keep getting to hit on. So,
I'm a meta person.
oh yeah,
So we're never talking about the actual thing we're talking about.
yeah,
And it drives Andrea crazy too, because we'll be having a fight about something like the groceries or the dishes or something, and then I immediately jump 4 levels up and be like, I think here's what's going on with us for the past week. Like,
oh yeah,
and that frustrates her to no avail, because I'll always do that. So I apologize for just
oh no,
layering
no worries.
stuff on top.
I'm
of
kind of
stuff.
the same way. So I love this. I hope somebody is listening to this that actually is
Me
is
too.
following
Hey, you
us,
and me both. You and me both.
So, but yeah, like, so friend groups, relationships. So yeah, so, by having this strong community, having these strong friendships, I feel like in a way the people who may be interested, in pursuing a relationship with me will see that, because I'm very open and honest with who my friends are, and who, you know, what our behaviors are, and that sort of thing. So hopefully that can be like some sort of positive thing that somebody sees, and so they have a good idea of my values, of who I am, and what I'm striving for, and knowing that when I fail that I do have a system of accountability in place, that I can fall back on, or that even they feel safe going to and saying, I'm worried about Daniel because of this thing or whatever. And I've had friends that do that. I've had friends sit down and call me out on some really difficult stuff to talk about, but like, my goodness, being humbled is such an awesome opportunity, to really face the things that we need to grow in. Because if it's left up to us just completely individually, our growth is probably not going to be the best it can be.
I think that's just because people seek comfort.
Yeah.
In all aspects of life. And one of my other favorite dudes is Aubrey Marcus, who has another podcast that I'll have to recommend to you. Who he's constantly preaching the message of put yourself in hardship, find hardship, because that's how you come out the other side to achieve something. And he does it in all sorts of ways. He's got a whole book about this, and there's an entire section dedicated to the concept of willpower, and how taking a freezing cold shower is like one way to put yourself in a hardship that you're just accepting and you move on. And for me, I think that I feel the exact same way, where we are constantly surrounded by chronic stress today, in all aspects of our lives. Work can reach us at any moment. I could have a text from a client any second now as we're sitting here trying to be in this moment. But we don't necessarily have enough acute stress, which is the type where I'm cold, I'm hot, I'm working out and in pain, I'm whatever. And so in that same way, I think you're driving at something that I completely agree with, which is when you find that hardship, but when you have either a strong willpower for yourself, or also the aid of friends who can help push you through those things, that's how we grow and change. And
Yes.
and conflict is actually what drives more change.
Yeah, I look at the people who inspire me. I look at like Teddy Roosevelt or something, and I think, am I going to have the same kind of story if I sit and watch Netflix all day?
Right.
Am I going to have the same kind of story if I avoid, any sort of difficulty? No, absolutely not. Like, if I aspire to have these adventures, to have these stories, to have these scars, that sort of thing, like, I have to fight the bear, I have to get in there and really put myself in the opportunity to do that. There was there's 2 examples of that I'll share. One, a quick one, is when I went to India, is with a friend who's also named Daniel. And the very first meeting he and I ever had, I liked his camera, and in that conversation he mentioned that he had spent some time in India. He says, I'm wanting to go back, you should come with me sometime. And so less than 2 years later, he and I are like best friends, and we're on this plane going to India together. Right. And about 3 days into the trip, I had this backpack that didn't fit well. I had these sandals that I had bought that were just not doing it for me. It was in this really gnarly place, trying to figure out a bus schedule, walking back and forth on this like non-existent sidewalk, and all this, and I was just so frustrated, and like my feet just hurt so bad. And then I just had this epiphany because I was looking at the ground, and I was like, wait, my feet hurt because I'm here. I'm finally here. Like I've wanted to go to India ever since I saw Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like I want to be there,
Yeah.
you know. And so it's like so that's a mantra I kind of repeat to myself. My feet hurt because I'm here. And then another really good real world experience I had as Samuel and Matthew, two of the guys in Lightbox with me. We went hiking and camping up in Arkansas a couple of years ago. It was like right after New Year's, like maybe like January 3rd or something. And we knew it was going to be kind of chilly and whatever, nice little winter camp.
Oh.
And so we got there, and as we were hiking up, a blizzard hit.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, why not? You know, maybe that was naive, but we kept hiking, and then it got really gnarly, and so we had to like make an emergency camp and set that up, and then we had to hunt for firewood in the snow, you know, just kick around and hope we found something that at one point was dry enough, you know, and then we're using our jet boil camp stove to try to like heat this wood up enough to even like burn, you know, and start a fire with all this wind around us. There wasn't a great place to block and whatever. And then that night, you know, sleeping, it got to 10 below. It was cold and miserable. And like I had to wake up every 10 minutes and wiggle my toes just so they, you know, so I could keep circulation. It was probably the longest night of my life. It was miserable. So cold. And the next morning we woke up and it was gorgeous. And we had this whole just like snow-covered mountain to ourselves. And
It's someone's drag race now.
yeah. And we you know, ate some breakfast and got back on the trail, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I would, if somebody had told me it's like, hey, a blizzard's going to hit, it's going to get down to 10 below, I would have been like, okay, maybe I won't go camping this weekend.
Exactly. But
we did it.
Yeah.
And now I look back, and that's absolutely my favorite camping experience I've ever had.
Yeah.
It was just so awesome. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can snow camp now.
Yeah.
I can do that now.
And you can see, like, even as you start telling the story, you lit up. And people do that when people are talking about, like, okay, here's this crazy experience that I had. But for some reason, we all want to be really comfortable and stop seeking out the crazy experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting myself on the other side of that and saying like, so I always go out and do. I'm not Teddy Roosevelt. I don't go out and do that. But making yourself more open to it has got to be the answer to being able to walk away with those experiences, those scars.
Yeah.
If you lost a toe, it would have been like even crazier. It'd been like, I lost my freaking toe on this camping trip. It was crazy, and you'd have even more stories.
Yeah. and then like flipping that back to what you said earlier about like the masculinity thing, real strength is in vulnerability. You know, we can't just wear blinders all the time. We can't just build this wall around us all the time and refuse anything new and anything challenging. You know, we need problems to solve. And by solving those, you know, that doesn't mean we won't have any more problems. It just means that like, okay, our foundation is stronger. We're stronger. And so that more problems that come along, we have an even better footing to take those things on. And that extrapolates out. That can be just us as an individual. That can be us as friend groups. That can be us as communities, you know, thus as states, nations, that sort of thing. Like that sort of ideology, like really, really wanting the best, you know, being willing to be challenged, you know, asking difficult questions. How do I love somebody? How many answers are there to that? You know, sometimes there's things that's like, okay, I know what it's not, but I could sit here for the rest of my life and name things that it is.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's so much that's awaiting for us when we open up to that. And then when we seek those adventures, and it doesn't have to be going to India. Sometimes it can be, you know, if somebody has anxiety, sometimes it can be like, I'm going to take myself out to this coffee shop. I'm going to take myself out to this restaurant. Or I've always wanted to be the person that sat at a park bench and read a book. I think I'm going to do that today.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to smile at a stranger, or maybe I'm going to jog on a trail I've never ran before, but maybe I'm going to do that. You know, it doesn't have to be some epic, you know, it doesn't have to be skydiving or mountain climbing or whatever. It can be all these little things. And again, those are the things that make up life. You know, all these little things, the little decisions that you and your wife are making at the grocery store or whatever, you know, that's what the relationship really is. You know, it's how well you navigate those things together. You know, it's really easy to have a good time when you're climbing a mountain. It's really easy to have a good time when you're camping, because it's a very, like, you know, we kind of, we prepare ourselves for it. You know, we choose to do those things because it's something that we want. And the people that are there, you know, I say that you always meet cool people on the top of a mountain. You know, and it's like driving up to like Mount Evans, like the peak of that or whatever. You know, like there's a certain type of person that does that I happen to, you know, vibe with. And so I always find that I have somebody with common interests, you know, when I'm in a place like that. And that mountaintop can be the same sort of thing. It can be the same sort of coffee shop. It can be a library. You know, little things like that. You're going to find these like communities, these ways to make friends and whatever. And also just to put yourself in that position that grows, you know, where you grow, and hopefully have people there that will be that accountability for you. So I think to bring that, again, I've said full circle like 47 times in this podcast, but
you are getting there.
It's more like a full spiral.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think it's like a full cinnamon roll.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah, but all coming back to like loving others, self-interest versus selfishness, you know, and having that vulnerability to grow, that you can love others well. Never telling yourself that you're done. You know, it's easy to say like, this is who I am. And to a degree, yes, you do know kind of your boundaries, your parameters, you know, the structure of certain things. But we have to have soft hearts. We have to let people in. We have to challenge the things that scare us. We have to take those leaps or those baby steps. Those, you know, jump in the pool. Maybe you need floaties, sure, but now you're in the pool. You know, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Running, my goodness. Like I look back at like where I was back in July, how far I could go without stopping, and what my pace was, and what my routes were, and all that. And then I open up my Strava app, and then I just can kind of see my growth in that. I'm like, wow. I didn't even realize I was doing that. Or like, you know, I think we all like grew beans like on little mason jars on our windowsill, like growing up, like that sort of thing. And within one day, you see like how tall a bean sprout can grow. Those little things, like John Lennon sang it, you know, life is what happens when we're busy making plans.
Yep.
That sort of thing, like allowing those transformations to happen in those moments, accepting those opportunities, being honest with ourselves about which opportunities we should take on and which ones we may need to back burner for a second, or which ones we need to completely say like, no, that's not for me. You know, being that, again, that honesty, and then again back to the community, like having trusted people who will carry you when you can't carry yourself, or that you can help when they can't carry themselves. You know, that there's, oh, it's so awesome. There's a ness here, you know, like something ness, and I feel like I'm gravitating towards, and maybe there's just not a word for it, or maybe I'm just not as eloquent about it as I could be, but yeah, like that's me, you know?
Well, I feel like what you've been saying, and I just let you go because I was really enjoying the images you were drawing. But what you've been saying is the essence of what I'm hoping to do exactly with this podcast, and what I'm hoping to not just do with the podcast, but also to be and to exemplify. All of those things that you're talking about. You've said them better than I could, which is great because as the host, you've done my job for me.
Right on.
Which is just perfect. So, and that's what I hope is that I can continue to find people like yourself who can do that. And I hope that listeners have taken away from this episode all of those things that we were talking about, and hopefully we put them in terms that everybody could apply to their own lives and think about what does that look like for me? What does that look like for Daniel versus what does it look like for Tyler? And how are we pushing ourselves? How are we changing in those ways? That is what I'm hoping to achieve with this project. So thank you to everybody who listened to this episode with Daniel Poe. Check him out. Make sure you check out his work on Instagram and also the Lightbox Collective. Do you want to give people your handles? You know them off the top of your head?
Yeah, that would be at DannyP323 and then Lightbox Collective. Just all one word. Sometimes we're pretty terrible with our social media, keeping it concurrent, but I try to say it's because we're so busy working. It is, but maybe after we turn the mic off, I can just get some good pointers on social media.
I'd be happy to.
But yeah, please check me out. I hope y'all see something you like and start a conversation. You know?
Absolutely. Daniel Poe, thank you for being on the podcast. You've been an excellent guest at the early stages here as I'm kicking off because it's prime. It's exactly what we're going for. So thanks for everybody for listening to Strangers Worth Meeting, and we will see you on the next episode.